And everyone should be in now.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm calling this public hearing to order at 6:02 p.m. In accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGLC 131, Section 40 in the Boston Wetlands Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances, Chapter 7-1.4, the Boston Conservation Commission will hold a virtual public hearing this evening on January 22nd, 2025, to review the following projects to determine what conditions, if any, the commission will impose in order to protect the interests of the public and private water supply, groundwater, prevention of pollution, flood control, prevention of storm damage, protection of fisheries and land containing shellfish, and protection of wildlife habitat. This evening's hearings will be followed by our regular meeting, and in accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, we are conducting this meeting online to ensure public access to the deliberations of the Conservation Commission. The public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Additionally, the meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. Members of the public may have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. For the record, I am Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission. Could staff please identify themselves?
Elena Itamari with the Environment Department.
Dee Hernandez with the Environment Department.
Vivian De La Paz with the Environment Department.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the roll of commissioners. Commissioner Sullivan?
John Sullivan.
Commissioner Linay?
Amy Linay.
Commissioner Wilson?
Mike Wilson.
Commissioner Herbst?
Dan Herbst.
Okay, is that it?
Oh, and Chair Parker, I believe that Commissioner Conan just joined us.
Okay. Commissioner Conan, are you here?
I'm here, Chair Parker. Sorry about the delay.
No, not at all. Okay, thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 006-2020 and Boston file number 2025-001, first of the year, from Beta Group Inc. on behalf of DCR for the proposed redevelopment of Ryan Park, which includes additional parking, updated playground and fitness equipment, construction of a new path, and installation of a subsurface drainage infiltration system located at 350 River Street in Mattapan. Resource areas are 100-foot buffer to BVW, 100-foot buffer to bank, and 25-foot riverfront area. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Good evening, Chair Parker. I'm Stella Lensing. I'm here on behalf of DCR. I'm the project manager, and I also have Beta Group here. I'll ask them to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Tyler Drew. I'm with the permitting group with Beta Group.
Great. So who's got the floor? And good to see you, Stella. Excuse me, Stella.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
Same to you.
Thanks. Tyler, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Like I said, my name is Tyler Drew. I'm with the permitting department at Beta Group. And I'm here to present the Ryan Park improvements project. Could you go to the next slide, please? So Ryan Park is located in Mattapan along the Neponset River. The park consists of playgrounds, ball courts, a bathhouse, a wading pool, a parking area, and a large grass field with walking paths. Next slide, please. The project is proposing to redevelop the existing layout of Ryan Park. Proposed improvements include redesigning the entrance to the park, a larger parking area, new playground equipment, new seating, a new fitness area, shade structures, misters, water bottle filling stations, as well as a series of new native tree plantings and new walking paths throughout the park. So we can see here, this is the western side of the park. If you look at the next slide, that's the eastern side. Oh, sorry. Within the parking area, the larger parking area, in order to accommodate the extra runoff, a subsurface infiltration system is proposed with an outfall that is proposed to be discharged to the buffer zone to the west. This will replace the existing paved swale from the corner of the parking lot there. Okay, next slide, please. This is the existing grass area. These are the proposed improvements. The existing grass area has a series of walking paths, but is otherwise undeveloped. The project is proposing to install a series of benches, to redesign the layout of the walking paths that will actually provide additional space along the Neponset River, which will be seeded with a conservation seed mix, and a series of tree plantings are also proposed throughout the area. You can see in the bottom, towards the bottom left, there's that space. There's a loop proposed with the walking path, and in there is a hummock that is proposed to be it's a raised area with native plantings, tree plantings, and native seeding. This area also has, you can see the proposed fitness area at the top of the screen there, and a series of benches along the walking path. Next slide. So this is the proposed planting plan. This actually shows a little bit more of the work within portions of the project within the 100-foot buffer zone within jurisdiction. They include the parking area, the playground, and several of the proposed walking paths. Jurisdictional areas that encompass the project include about 85 square feet of the locally jurisdictional riverfront area, which you can see towards the bottom center of the screen. That accounts for about 85 square feet, and also about 1,200 square feet of waterfront area. Work proposed in this area is limited to installation of erosion control measures. This would typically include placement of compost filter tubes along the limit of work, but there's no clearing of vegetation of any kind proposed within these areas. There is a stadium light post that's proposed within the waterfront area. This post will connect to an existing electrical service that runs under the ground there, so no additional ground disturbance is required. And the only other work proposed within this area would be seeding of the lawn area to restore any disturbed areas. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this is the planting plan for the grass area to the east. A portion of this is also located within the 100-foot buffer zone down at the southern portion of the site there. And as I said before, the existing walking paths will be reconfigured a little bit to provide an additional buffer between the park and the river. And it will also provide an opportunity to replace the fencing down there and install some tree plantings. So in total, on the site, 5 trees are proposed to be removed from jurisdictional areas, and 5 are proposed to replace them within jurisdictional areas. Project-wide, 11 trees have been identified for removal, which are in poor condition. They're not structurally sound, and they would also impede reconfiguring the park layout. So to replace these, we've proposed 34 native tree plantings, which you can see a close-up on the next slide. This is a list of the proposed tree plantings. There's just 34 trees that are going to be spread out throughout the park to provide shade for park patrons. And as the note says, all of these proposed plantings are native and they're listed on the Vascular Plants of Massachusetts or the USDA plants database. That's all I've got. If you have any other questions for me.
Sorry. Thank you. Quick question on the trees. What's the replication in caliper metrics?
I'm not 100% certain on the caliper of trees or DBH of which we are removing, but usually when we do replacement, Chair Parker, we go for 2.5-inch caliper trees from the nursery. But so, we are going to be replacing or adding more trees than what we're removing, but not all of them will be, well, not all the replacements will be within the jurisdictional area.
Okay, understood. Okay, thank you. Elena, what do you have on this?
Thank you, Chair Parker. We just wanted to confirm a few items just before moving forward. So we wanted to flag that the 25-foot riverfront area is identified as a resource area here, but again, just clarifying that the only activity happening within the 25-foot riverfront area is the installation of erosion controls. So if the commission wants to see additional conditions related to those, we can certainly include those. But our standard erosion control conditions generally do cover, making sure that everything is installed properly, making sure that, after any weather events, things like that, everything is still in place. The other item that had come up on the site visit was the question of whether there are any plans to install interpretive signage closer to the wetland. My understanding is at this time there aren't, but those are the two things that staff had flagged.
Okay, thank you. And so we had discussed the issue of interpretive signage in the past. And I think that maybe we should renew discussion of having standardized signs, interpretive signs, especially as it relates to private parties. So Stella, on that point, does DCR have signage that they put up, not delineating, but describing wetland areas and other things like that?
As far as I know, with regards to the projects that I work on, I have not seen any standard signage. That would definitely be a question for our ecological team if they have any sort of standard signage. So yeah, I haven't seen any that have been installed.
Yeah, I think, and don't quote me on this, I think that there are DCR signs describing the wetlands below you as not a spectator, as a visitor, in a very strange area over in Charlestown, underneath if you're walking towards that bridge that brings you to, it's past Paul Revere Park. If you walk through Paul Revere Park, instead of going over the bridge to the park on the other side and the skateboard park, if you go to the right and you're in like this weird, I didn't even know the path was there until I walked up it one day, and it leads back to like central Charlestown, like underneath the viaduct for 93. I think there's a set of signs there. I believe I remember reading them one time and thinking it was an odd place to have them. But they were definitely DCR generated signs, and they were pretty nice actually. So that maybe that's what you use. You just haven't seen it. But yeah, okay. There's also a delay. I'm getting distracted by a chat comment there. So anyway, we'll get to that later. Commissioner Sullivan, what do you have?
Yeah, so you mentioned that on the paved area, you're gonna have infiltration. You're assuming taking the 1 inch, and it's been calculated for that. What about the rest of the runoff on all the walking paths and any other hardscape that you may have? How does that, if under intense rainfalls, does it just sheet flow? Does it sheet flow over banks? Does it sheet flow to topography that you just store it? Or what do you do with the rest of the rainfall, but for what you described going into the parking lot?
Yeah, so at the moment, so a lot of the walkways that we have proposed are replacing existing. And so at this time, the existing pathways sheet flow into adjacent softscape and landscape where usually infiltration occurs. There's a lot. So for example, the existing trail around the open lawn area, there's just some sheet flow into that great lawn area. So that's what we're experiencing there. With regards to the ball courts and the concrete between the ball courts and the tennis courts and the wading pool, I'm not 100% certain what happens. I can't recall any of the existing drainage structures in that area. I'm assuming that we do just have sheet flow into adjacent landscape.
You're assuming, so if you don't
Yep.
have it, and the sheet flow is a rather intense rainstorm of 1.5 inches in an hour, where's it gonna run to, and is it gonna, get a good velocity going, trying to get its way to the riverbank and carve gullies or whatever? Yeah, and the existing drainage, what other existing drainage exists out there today? And if you have existing drainage out there today, is it properly sumped? Or do we know what's going on with all that?
Yeah, I mean, we at this time, we haven't heard of any issues with regards to drainage, and there's no evidence of erosion occurring on site because of stormwater sheet flow. And there's quite a lot of paved surfaces right now on site.
Right, but you're not repaving, so you're just leaving all the existing there today. Are you
We are
repaving?
we're modifying the pavement, but we're not increasing it.
I got it, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
modify it and you twist it, and all of a sudden you decide
Yeah.
the water has to go this way rather than that
Yeah.
way.
We're assuming sheet flow of those
you-
areas.
So there's no treatment at all on it. This is hardscape to green
Yep.
grass, and you think
Right.
it's gonna infiltrate.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, there are significant lawn areas on the site in order
Yeah.
to infiltrate the runoff.
Oh, no, and that's all fine if it's all sheet flowing to a lawn area that you're holding. I was more
Right.
concerned about when that gets kind of full and then it rains again, it now has to go somewhere because the significant areas are full and sloppy and wet
Right.
and
Right.
what happens is in reality, the lawn crew goes out there and says, I'll drain it. They dig a little ditch and bring it over to the river.
Mhm.
And so you violate everything we try to set up. That's,
Right, exactly.
I didn't see a lot about what, any improvements. I see what you're doing in the parking lot. Yay. You're putting it, is it a new wading pool going in? Is it a one-time?
The new wading pool went in,
Last
it
year,
was
this year.
open last summer, correct?
Okay, yeah, okay, that. All right. Well, I don't know, I just throw that out to everyone else. It just seems that, it was kind of like a flash. If we put a little infiltration basin, we've done our duty. It's a lot of area, and you're doing the right thing in the parking lot. I got it. But I don't know what happens to the rest of it.
I will say the parking lot is the only area where there's any real expansion of impervious surface, and the infiltration system should handle that. I will say along the large grassed field, adjusting the layout of the walking paths allows a bit more of a buffer between the site and the river they'll also help infiltrate and provide some treatment before it reaches the river.
And I hear that. That's how it should work. But I didn't see any like calcs. So you got this rain and how much rain will come off. Just because when you say sheet flow, you assume it's automatically all going to sheet equally in one spot, and it doesn't come to a point. That's what when we say a sheet flow, we all assume nice little thin layer of water running. But that's normally not the way we build things. We build things so that the water gets concentrated in one spot, and then
Right.
it flows off and it causes gullies. That's what reality we wind up building all the time.
Mhm.
And I couldn't tell from all your layouts if that was occurring or not.
We did not, so we're not touching any of the courts, and we have not seen any evidence of that any erosion
Right. I
occurring.
hear you. Yeah.
So we can certainly make sure we look at our areas again and just make sure we are comfortable with the sheet flow and the pitches for the way they are draining.
Yeah, and all I would ask if we do go ahead and vote this is that before they start construction, they send that data over to me and just show to me that it doesn't occur. Someone takes a hard look at it.
Right.
Beta group takes a look and says, yep, the grading is such, we're not going to concentrate the water in one spot. Because that's what happens when you build things. You get a set of plans, and the contractor says, yeah, they're nice. Let's see what I can do.
I know. Water will do what water wants to do. I know. Yeah.
Okay, and that seems sensible. And I assume, Stella, what's the timing on this? You probably have funds allocated or appropriated, and you want to get going. So,
Yeah.
is
I mean,
still holding this up for those calcs? We could have you give them to us after before construction.
yeah, that sounds
Oh.
great.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Sullivan?
Oh, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Linay.
I will say I had some similar concerns, and I know you said the basketball court is remaining, but given how close it is to or essentially in the waterfront area and close to the riverfront area, and knowing that storms are increasingly intense, I just wondered if there was an opportunity for like a level spreader or something to kind of dissipate that velocity if there was a huge storm. And then I think on the pathways, it did look to me like they're wider than they used to be, maybe from about 8.5 to now 12 feet. Is that Stella, you shaking your head or?
No, we're trying to keep them at the same width. We will be adding shoulders to them, so we do have, reinforced shoulders that have seating right up against the pave, but we are keeping them at the same width.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
because I was going to comment if it was something that to accommodate, maintenance vehicles. I just wondered if it could be only one side is wider and closer to the river. It's that narrower.
Yeah, we
width, but maybe.
certainly could double check that and make sure. Yeah.
Okay. And then I was a little curious about the hummock placement because I'm actually quite familiar with this area. And I feel like the view of that bridge, is quite nice from the park. And so this is more of a design comment, but I think it was almost positioned in a peculiar way to me where it would impact that nice view. And then let's see, looking at the plant list, I did have a question about the use of the Eastern Red Cedar. It was on one of the lists on a site where you're also adding Amelanchier and Hawthorns, and maybe your designer who was responsible for that isn't here, but there's some risk of cedar rust, I think, with that, whether or not that's, I know it's not like a fatal thing, but
it is definitely a concern of mine, and I will say, unfortunately, the cedar rust is on all the Amelanchier, whether you have Eastern Red Cedar nearby or not. It's just one of those things that I've heard from nurseries. They just have no control over it. But yes, I hear what you're saying about that.
Yeah, I know it could be like a mile from your site, right? And still attack them. And then let's see. I think my only other question, I did read some description of invasive management or treatment, and I was curious what kind of invasives and if that's something that is built in for a multi-year kind of management process depending on the type of invasive. I'm not sure how DCR deals with that specifically.
So I can just speak to we're going to do some management adjacent to that parking lot. We're going to do some management as we're impacting the site. We're not going to be doing extensive invasive management. One of the things that everyone should be aware of is if you can go to the slide next that shows the plan with the parking lot and the playground. So just to the left of that area. So yes, in that area. So to kind of page left and south, we actually have extremely sensitive cultural resources located in that area. So digging is going to be limited. So we cannot do any soil removal. So that's where we're a little bit hampered in terms of, there is some knotweed on the edge there where we're reconstructing the parking lot and making the trail connection. So we will be cutting probably and that type of invasive control, but we will not be able to dig out and remove soils because of those cultural resources. So that's the limits of what we're dealing with here.
I see. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Tyler, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I have nothing to add for that.
Thank you. Just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. Commissioner Conan?
Thank you, Chair Parker. Is this a minor project, would you say, or a major one?
It depends how you define minor or major. I mean, I see it as a major improvement for the community, but you know, because we are making great improvements to an existing facility, but I don't know how you define major
I
or
was
minor.
thinking more in terms of effort and budget and whatnot. And the context of my question is, how often do such projects happen?
That's a tough question. This is a major effort in terms of budget. It's fairly big. It's estimated at about $3 million. This particular park, I think, has been redeveloped a few times. I think most recently, gosh, I want to say in the 70s, and then there was some improvements added in the 90s, and then more recently, the ball courts were resurfaced. So it is a park that's long overdue for improvements. We're also making improvements to minor improvements or major improvements to the bathhouse to add a lifeguard station right now, and then, you know, all these amenities that we're adding here.
Thank you.
In my mind, is a major improvement.
Right, it does sound major, and the reason I asked again is to figure out now how often you get this opportunity to do a major project, and this one happens to be by a river, and but by the time the next major project comes around, what would be the impact of this one, and will we be able to weather everything that comes our way between now and then? That's kind of the question I have in my mind.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I recently, like the trail with the bridge was recently completed in 2017. We knew we had to make improvements here since that trail opened in 2017. So it's been, you know, since we started working on this project, it was at least 7 years or five or 6, 7 years. And so here we are now.
Right, right. So it's knotweed the main invasive you're dealing with, and again, I heard you talk about why you can't remove the soil because of sensitive cultural resources. Makes me curious what those resources are. Also, kind of wondering, are we like is historic preservation or something like that running up against ecological health here?
I mean, that's a really good point. I think, you know, we're trying to balance all those things together. We're going to do our best to get rid of the knotweed as best we can, because we don't want it growing next to our trail, and we don't want it spreading more than it already has. And, you know, we're just going to try and work with it that way.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think we all know how persistent it can be,
Yeah.
and it spreads as a rhizome underground. So if any of it is allowed to be there, then it will come back, as we're seeing everywhere.
It'll come through the pavement too. So it's
Yeah,
a problem for us.
it will. Yeah, it's a beast.
Yes.
So I may not have understood this or heard this correctly. You are removing trees from the jurisdictional area, but replacing them elsewhere? Is that what you said?
So we are removing some back in the jurisdictional area, but we're replacing a lot more elsewhere on the site, just because there's more opportunities.
I see.
Yeah.
and not the same number in the jurisdictional area.
It will be the same number,
Yeah.
yes.
Same number. Okay.
Just not the same, not same DBH for DBH. So not the
see.
1-to-1 ratio, because we usually purchase smaller trees for installation.
Because they're saplings and they'll grow, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, that always brings up a question, because when you take down mature trees, you're taking down a lot with a tree, and because they're part of growing the ecological system and sequestering carbon and all that stuff that we know well about. And saplings will take a long time before they get to that level of climate resilience. On the signage, I got a little bit of a discussion there. I'm wondering, once again, if this is an opportunity to do some educational signs, and this being DCR, and it could be that, they could be about the river and about why it's important to protect the river, and how in an era of climate destabilization, extra care is needed to conserve natural resources and whatnot. Is that part of the budget, or is that something you'd consider?
We have not, we do not have it currently as part of our budget. I would be glad to consider it. I just want to note one other thing that we do have in the playground is our playground planner has worked on a theme for this park, and a lot of it is river themed. And she also is working on signage and interactive signs in the playground that will also help to convey this message about the river and the ecology of the river. So, we will have some interpretation in those terms within the project.
That sounds great. I mean, and even more explicit signage would also be helpful, so that the kids who are playing there will learn, and I think we could use all the help we can get to increase education in that area. The last point, listening to Commissioner Sullivan there, it seems like some amount of work is done to ensure that the water that falls on this site, given that we're expecting more and more extreme precipitation events and chronically increasing precipitation, well, how is the water or the stormwater flow management going to be done? Is there a way to monitor how things actually end up performing? My thinking here is, it seems like we're sort of taking a zero-sum approach here. We're creating some impervious surface, so we're going to compensate for that sort of thing. But the expectation should be that there will be a lot more flood events than we've seen in the past. And while there's water falling on the site, the river could also be swelling because of flooding from other catchment areas. So I'm wondering if there's like a plan to monitor how the site does in terms of its stormwater and response to stormwater over time.
I mean, we certainly, because of the structure that we're installing in the parking lot, we will have our stormwater team regularly reviewing that structure and monitoring that structure. We also have, our operations staff are very good at letting us know when we have flooding issues on site. So we have staff at the site daily, especially during peak times. So I think there will be eyes on the park. We have, of course, a robust community who are very communicative with us. So I think that we will have some really good feedback about what's going on the site.
Great. Explicit signs asking for such feedback. We always see signs about, if we see something suspicious, then tell us, right? There could be more signage about if you see, flow of water where you don't expect, and there is pooling or there is erosion, or puddles where you don't expect to see them, and report them too. Those kind of signages would be helpful too, that I think. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chair Parker.
Commissioner Herbst?
No additional questions from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we do have a hand up. Ms. Ortiz?
Hello, can everybody
Yes.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Vivian Ortiz and I live here in Mattapan. I'm part of the Neponset River Greenway Council as well as the DCR Stewardship Council. And I live right around the corner from this space. Have been heavily involved with DCR and through the Neponset River Greenway Council, which is a group of residents that have been working closely with DCR for at least 20 years for every section of the trail to make sure we're kind of like the eyes on the ground. A couple of things that I want to point out. Flooding, it doesn't appear to be an issue at this point, at this part of the river. We have a lot of flooding taking place where the over by past Pope John Paul, over in by the bridge that goes between Mattapan, that goes between Dorchester and Quincy. That's where we'll see the flooding. At the intersection of Granite Ave and the trail, we are starting to get some flooding now, but the river doesn't rise to the level that it will at some point. So just wanted to point that out. As far as flooding in the park, I don't recall ever seeing any. I spend a lot of time out along the walking trail to get onto the path. Signage is something that, as a person that uses the park, as in a community where folks are not necessarily as familiar with the parklands that we have here in Massachusetts, and as a member of the DCR Stewardship Council, I have been requesting signage for a very long time. I will continue to do so. We do have some signage that lets folks more wayfinding to let folks know how to get from point A to point B. We work very closely with DCR to help them, designate where the signs were going to be placed. But all of that informational signage that you all are talking about, that is something we already have on our plate as the Greenway Council to give, to continue to give input to DCR and see where we go with that. One of my major concerns is that on the presentation, I did not hear, or maybe I missed it, the number of parking spaces that are going to be added to the existing parking lot. Do we know that?
Yeah, we've got 9 right now, I think, and then we're gonna end up with 18 or 19. So it's not a huge amount that we're adding, but the value of that expanded parking area is to have a safe parking lot where you can actually drive around and turn around safely and not have just a one-way in and out, that you're trapped. Right now, it's just you're going in and you're parking, and it's really difficult to back out of your parking space safely.
Thank you, Stella. And it's also very difficult as a person that is trying to get up and down River Street anytime during the summer. So not crazy about the parking being added because 9 additional spaces is not going to really help the number of vehicles that we have traveling on River Street. It's been a concern of the neighbors for a long time, but I'm happy that it's 9 and not 90, okay? I would like to see, or, at some point, how much of the space over there, I don't know how to read the plans that well, okay? So hopefully we can have a conversation, Stella, with the Greenway Council to be able to answer those questions. And I think my last question has to do, how many trees and where are they? Jurisdictional area, I have no idea what that is. So is it near the fence that's closer to the bridge? Is it closer to where the play area is at? I don't know what the 5 trees are that are going to get removed from that jurisdictional area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stella or Tyler?
Yeah. Tyler, do you want to point out the trees within the jurisdiction that we're removing?
Just what is jurisdictional area? Is it
Oh.
closer to is it closer to River Street? Is it closer to the Harvest River Bridge? Is it along the trail, the path,
And
the circular?
hold on a second, please. Dee Dee, can you pull up the slide that shows the jurisdictional areas? A picture says 1,000 words here. Okay, and maybe Tyler can walk you through this.
Yeah. So jurisdictional area just refers to areas in the vicinity of wetlands and the Neponset River within jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. So we're proposing to remove 5 trees. I don't recall the species off the top of my head.
That's fine, that's fine. I'm just wondering
Yeah, but
where exactly, because
yep. So this is the planting plan for the grass field.
Uh-huh.
There aren't any trees proposed within the jurisdictional area, but there are proposed for shade throughout the grass area. I think on the previous slide, it shows the 5 trees that are. Yep. So
okay, I'll
the
look at this more closely.
Okay.
I'm good to go. I'll look at it more closely.
Sure.
Yeah,
There was something about seeding that's going to be added through that field.
like, oh, so like native seed mixes around the outer edge of the trail.
I'm sorry, I
So-
thought you said seat, like
Oh,
seeding,
there's
and you're talking
also
about seeds.
seating. There's also
Okay.
benches. We're adding benches.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
And
And
I
then
just
I had
wondered,
read something about bike parking facilities,
yes.
but I didn't hear any mention of that here.
Yes, we've got bike racks. If you can see on this slide, just page south of the playground area, there's a shade shelter and we've got bike racks located there. And then just next to, when you come into the main entrance, sort of outside of the wading pool area, there
Okay.
are bike racks located
Yeah, they're already
there.
there, right? Yeah,
Yes,
they're already
so
there.
we're adding
Okay.
or moving them because they're not quite in the correct place. So we're
Okay, all right,
putting
perfect.
you back in, yes. And just
Okay.
so you know, Vivian, the trees in this image, there are some Zelkovas planted in the play area. They are in bad condition,
Okay.
structurally and health-wise, so we're removing those trees. They're
Okay,
not
I'll
great
go and
species.
see if I can find them then. I think that's it for now. Thank you so much. I'm happy to have come to this meeting, and throughout the process, we will be back. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. I did see in the chat, and thank you, Paul, the potato memorial that's over by the Millers River. And now I'm thinking in horror that maybe that's a sign that I was reading, and maybe there is an interpretive signage over there. So we will look at that. So I think where we are now is we're looking for a special condition regarding the sheet flow calculations before construction. Also, as far as signage, I think it sounds like Stella Vivian's going to be pushing you on the Greenway committee or council organization over there on signage. And Elena, we've begun the discussion on signage as well. And so hopefully we can come up with something that is consistent across the city that adequately describes wetlands resources and provides the type of educational information for all of our citizens and visitors to wetlands areas. Commissioner Linay, was there anything else in your comments that needed to be included as a special condition?
I don't think so, but I actually had one other clarifying question, if that's okay. Wait, did you say, Tyler, that light pole is staying in place? The footing is staying in place, but the light pole is being replaced at the court?
So a stadium light pole is proposed, but there is an existing electrical service running alongside of the court there.
But the footing itself, are you reusing the footing? Is that?
No, I don't think that there's no existing.
There'll be it's a large footing that will go in, but not like massively large, but it is, floodlight.
Frost,
Well,
yeah. So is there a way that, because I mean, I think, courts lighting is very, pretty efficient in terms of photometrics now. Could you consider just, could that be shifted, plan up a little bit just to get it out of that kind of right on that borderline?
So we looked at a couple of options for the sports lighting. We looked at putting it on the on the diagonal corners of the basketball courts. And the best scenario that we received from our lighting specialist was it had to be sort of in the middle of that court. So unfortunately, it's right there.
Yeah, it's just really right on that edge.
It is.
I guess I just think a matter of, even a few feet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to asking and seeing if we can look at that, but I, don't want to overpromise and then underdeliver. Like, I'm going to ask, and then if they, come back and say, no, it really has to be in this location, I don't, want to have that be an issue either.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, great. Is that it?
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Stella, I think we don't have a order of conditions issue anymore. We have
No, we're all set with that. Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. So with that, I would entertain a motion to issue an order of conditions and close the hearing with a condition regarding the sheet flow calculations. And also, before construction, report back on the light stanchion or the footing or the movement of that light that Commissioner Linay had brought up. So we have a motion. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson never joined us, did he? Right.
Nope,
Okay.
I'm here.
You are here.
Aye. Yep.
Any comments on this before we move on?
No, we had great set of questions. I didn't need to, add to that. Thank you, guys.
So sorry. Okay. Commissioner Wilson, do you have a vote on this?
Yes, I vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a
Great.
good night, everybody.
Thank you,
Good
everyone.
luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for Boston file number 2025-003 from Niche Engineering on behalf of the Olmsted Village Master Developer LLC for the proposed construction of 6 new buildings and its associated utility improvements, an extension of West Main Street, a multimodal path, and the development of the private Warbler Way within the 10-acre project site located at Harvard Street in Mattapan. Resource area is 100-foot buffer to IVW. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Hi, my name is Zoe Weinrobe. I'm the Chief of Real Estate with Two Life Communities. And I'm also here with my partner, Jerry Rappaport from Lena New Boston, and Two Life Communities and Lena New Boston make up the Olmsted Village Master Developer.
Great. Good evening.
Good evening. And I'm also here with John Schmidt from Niche Engineering and David Andrews from Brown, Richardson, and Rowe. So I'm going to give a brief intro and then hand off the presentation to John and David. So we're here to talk about our Olmsted Village development, which is a 10-acre parcel that Two Life and Lena New Boston were awarded or designated as the developer by DCAM, who controls the former Boston State Hospital site in Mattapan. This is the last developable parcel of the former Boston State Hospital site, and which has been part of a 20+ year effort of redevelopment of a really important resource in the community. And if you can go to the next slide, what we're proposing, I'm just going to give a brief overview of the larger development plan, which is nearly 300 units, almost all of which are over 90% of which are going to be deed restricted affordable housing. Two Life is going to be building 2 rental buildings. The Treehouse at Olmsted Village, which is building number 1 on this plan, which is going to be a 66 apartment, 100% affordable below up to 60% of the area median income. And it's going to be an intergenerational community with seniors, families who are adopting children out of the foster care system, and apartments for youth aging out of the foster care system, and an amazing community program space to support that intergenerational community. And Brook House development, which is also a 127 apartment, 100% affordable senior housing community with amazing program space, daycare center, healthcare center, and lots of publicly accessible community space. And my partner, Jerry Rappaport of Lena New Boston, is going to be developing 97 mixed income home ownership homes in 4 different buildings identified on the plan. Go to the next slide. And so beyond just the affordable housing, Olmsted Village is also going to provide a number of additional community benefits to Boston, and really specifically the Mattapan community, including, both permanent jobs for folks who are going to be working in these buildings, as well as over 600 construction jobs. Lots of priorities for both Mattapan residents in terms of residency goals for the different housing developments, as well as for jobs. We're also going to be providing over $6 million in community benefits, including $1.5 million that is going to be set aside for community-based organizations doing work in the Mattapan community, as well as a multimodal bike path that's connecting the Mattapan neighborhood on Harvard Street all the way to the Boston Nature Center through the development, and preserving a significant amount of existing woodlands that we're going to be talking about tonight. And all of the buildings at Olmsted Village are going to be 100% electric, either LEED and or Passive House certified, and we're going to have all of which are going to meet sort of net zero Verdo requirements well before the 2050 goal at the city. So with that being said, I'm going to hand off the presentation to John to talk more deeply about the NOI tonight.
Thank you, Zoe. Next slide, please. So the area of the isolated vegetated wetland, which consists of about 12,415 square feet, is the inner circle that you see in this drawing before you. Harvard Street is to the right, and Deering Road is to the north. Both are public ways. You can see the outer 100-foot buffer zone line, and our work just clips the 100-foot buffer area. Just to help you understand this a little bit better, the brown pathway from Harvard Street that goes down Deering and cuts through the site is the intermodal pathway, which is for people, for pedestrians, walkers, as well as for bicycles. Harvard House, which is on the right, is that large white building, and you can see the 100-foot buffer just sort of clips the corner. That corner is about 98 feet from the wetland. It's from the wetland itself. And then we also have areas of the parking lot and other Harvard Street improvements that are just within that buffer zone. And to the left, you can see the end of Warbler Way. Warbler Way, like the other private ways within this development, will be impervious pavement. But that roadway is actually outside of the buffer zone, but the pathway that I'm speaking about, the intermodal pathway, just sort of clips that as well. Next slide, please. So this gives you the survey and also gives you the utility plan. What I highlighted here in yellow is the wetland that we're speaking to. Stormwater, basically for the overall parcel, that whole 10 acres, we're creating about 3.5 acres of impervious area. And for stormwater management, what we are doing is we are capturing, for the entire development, we are capturing and mitigating the rates and volumes of flow to the existing rates and volumes of runoff. And this is asked of us of the Audubon Society, which abuts the project. And that being said, the question about stormwater recharge, we are actually capturing, the site consists of about 197,000, the entire site consists of about 197,000 square feet of impervious area. If you need to capture and recharge 1¼ inches, that's about 20,563 cubic feet. Because we are mitigating the rates and volumes from this basically undeveloped wooded site to the pre-existing levels, we'll be capturing and recharging approximately 56,930 cubic feet, well above what are typical standards by DEP as well as by Boston Water and Sewer. What you see here in the black, those are below grade stormwater retention systems. Stormwater will be collected there, infiltrated, and then will discharge into the abutting development through a pipe connection. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, go back. One thing that is not called out in the application, but was brought to our attention during the site visit last week, with Didi Hernandez and Alice Brown is that there is an abandoned overhead electrical line that crosses through above the resource area. There are 2 utility poles within the 25-foot buffer, but outside of the resource area. And part of this project will be removing those poles and those overhead cables to really clear up any debris or old infrastructure that may be within that area. Next slide, please. Here, I'm going to pass it off to David Andrews with Brown, Richards, and Rowe, who will speak to the plantings and overall project in his terms. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So this plan kind of zooms out, so you see the whole of the development that Zoe was framing in the beginning. Off to the right, you can see the isolated wetland and its buffer zones that John was just walking through. The big thing to point out here is just, one, that this really fills in this undeveloped piece of the old hospital site and really connects the Mattapan neighborhood through that multi-use path that John was talking about. So that starts on Deering Road in the upper right-hand corner where you can see some intersection improvements. And it weaves a separated bike path and pedestrian path all the way through our site to the west, to page left here to the Boston Nature Center. And all along the way, there's a series of public open spaces or semi-private open spaces related to each of the buildings. And what we're trying to do around the wetland area is, you can really see it's a large stand of existing trees on that site, and we're really trying to minimize or limit any incursion into that buffer zone area. So we're kind of working around that very intentionally. There's also a large stand of trees that borders the Boston Nature Center. Again, that page left where you can see a lot of trees there, which we're retaining as well. Zooming into this specific buffer zone area, this plan just kind of highlights some of the development that's happening, and we're also proposing a kind of a passive park space adjacent to the multi-use path, and that's that oval lawn that's sort of in page center there. And that oval lawn encroaches to about the 50-foot buffer. But primarily, any of our work is really working in that 85-foot buffer is the most it really encroaches into. We have a couple key things to point out for us here on this is there is some tree impacts as a result of this work. We're looking at proposing to remove 14 trees, totaling 111 caliper inches. Some of these trees are in poor condition, which we can go through in some of the later sheets. But we're proposing to replant 38 trees. 28 of that 38 will be within the buffer, totaling about 95 caliper inches DBH at planting time. An additional 10 trees, which has a 30-inch DBH, immediately adjacent to that buffer. So we are exceeding the caliper inch removal within the buffer zone. So we have, again, 111 caliper inches being removed within, and we're replanting a total of 125 caliper inches either within or immediately adjacent. We can go to the next slides, which show a tree removal plan and then a planting plan. This plan here highlights the 14 existing trees being removed. Primarily, these trees that are being removed are in poor to fair condition based off the tree survey prepared by Bartlett. So there are 5 trees on the right-hand side along Harvard Street. These trees are a little different than the other ones in that they're only being removed to facilitate a widening of a sidewalk for our team to meet City of Boston sidewalk standards. Not really so much to support the development, but we are proposing to replant them. As I'll get to, there are 8 trees at the top of the page there. This is near the driveway entrance and building corner for the future Harvard building. Again, these trees are, and all these trees on this site are below 10 inches in size, primarily around the 6 to 7 inch DBH size. And there's a single shadowbark hickory to the west here, near the cul-de-sac. And if we go to the next slide, planting plan here, this plan shows tree replacement as well as any shrub perennials that we're proposing as well. We are identifying the trees or plants that are within the 100-foot buffer zone on this plan, as well as the additional trees I mentioned before, those 10 additional trees that are immediately adjacent, but just outside of the buffer zone. We submitted a tree planting plan with species list as part of the application. All trees that are in plants proposed within and adjacent to that 100-foot buffer are supposed to be native species. We can go to the next slide. And here again, pulling back out, John, if you want to walk through some of the schedule and how these different buildings are planned to be implemented across the site.
So many of these buildings are in the process of seeking funding to move forward, but we have recently secured some funding. The parcel itself is scheduled to be transferred to this development team in June of this year, June of 2025. And soon after, we intend to start the MassWorks infrastructure work with some money that was granted from the state through MassWorks. And this is primarily for Warbler Way to install the utilities associated with that, water and sewer and subgrade, and as well as doing clearing and some clearing and grading. And then in 2026, we intend to start the roadway construction and build a pathway, at which point we are fairly confident that the Brook House and Russell House will be able to go into construction. And then we hope the following summer, 2027, that the Tree House project can go into construction, as well as the Harvard House, which is on Harvard Street, and then the 2 Warbler townhouses. The asterisk that I have next to these various descriptions is work that falls within the 100-foot buffer zone. The other buildings, once the land is transferred and subdivided, will be under different ownerships and entities and outside of that buffer zone. So I'd like to have a discussion I had on site with a couple of your agents was, as we come back in the future, as this project comes along, just what is it that we need to submit to the city to move forward? And if you go to the next slide, that speaks to that a little bit more. Let me just, so, building infrastructure, again, we anticipate that the building and infrastructure projects will require additional Concom overview, as defined in the conditions, pre-construction needs, post-construction submissions, that sort of thing. That would be for the infrastructure package, both infrastructure packages, the Harbor House and the Townhouse. And our hope is that the other parcels that are well away from this wetland area could proceed without the additional Concom overview. Of course, this project is going to be going through Boston Water and Sewer, and we're also in the process of going through the Public Improvement Commission, so there'll be a lot of eyes on this project as well. Abandoned utilities and overhead wires, they will be removed, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, and we will make sure that happens in a careful manner and without heavy equipment that needs to go into the wetland. And finally, informational signage. We understand that the commission is looking for informational signage to describe these wetland resource areas. And we look for the commission to help provide us some guidance as to what that sign should say and where it should be located. And that's our presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. A little complicated here. Can we go back to the last slide regarding what you would have to come back for?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That seems right to me. Was there a question on that, or?
No, I just, as we move forward, we just wanted to understand that. I don't know if it's something that would be in the conditions or just something that we can discuss today so everyone understands as we go forward what the Conservation Commission's overview would be for which projects specifically.
Okay. Okay. I think, and when it says Concom overview,
I mean,
oversight.
Oversight. I mean, in your conditions, there's criteria during each phase of design and construction. We would what project would have to comply with that, and the other projects could proceed without your feedback or direction.
Okay, understood. Okay, we'll bring that up as a discussion point. So quick question on the DCAM land transfer. Does that trigger a MEPA review, or have you already been through that?
We've already completed our NEPA, the NEPA review process, and that's all been finalized about 6 months ago or so, or maybe even.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay.
I should also say we've also gone through our Article 80 and Boston Zoning Commission and 40, so that we've gone through, we got our Article 80 approval in actually February of 2023, and then did a notice of project change process this past summer. And we also have, we're designated, we sort of extended the existing smart growth 40R district for the site too, so that was all approved back in 2023.
Okay. Great. So we're like the last agency standing.
Oh no, we still are going through our PIC and PIC
Yeah.
and water and sewer processes as well.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't mean to diminish them at all. Major permits here. Okay, great. And you talked about your collaboration with the Nature Center. My recollection, I don't know if there's someone here from the Nature Center. My recollection is that for projects that you've brought in front of us before, they were here and they had comments, and they were mostly great comments about the collaboration. So when we get to public comment, maybe there'll be somebody there from the Nature Center that would want to speak to this. I don't really have any questions. I know that the commissioners are going to have a lot of questions, so I think I'm just going to pass it on first to Elena.
Thank you, Chair Parker. John, I had a quick question. So regarding the abandoned utility poles and wires, sort of a logistical question. Are those impacts already, are any additional impacts already included in the square footage of impacts for resource areas, or are they're strictly in the buffer zone, right? So that wouldn't.
Yeah, they're strictly in the buffer zone, and we confirmed that on site last week with your agents.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, I think as long as it won't impact how we would eventually, issue an order of conditions if the commission chooses to do so. But it would be helpful to just make sure that we have all the correct sort of square footages somewhere in our files, so that when it comes time for a COC, there aren't any questions at that point. And then I think that I think Chair Parker, you mentioned the signage question, which was the only other thing that I had in my notes.
Okay. Okay. As far as what John put up regarding additional CONCOM oversight, reaction to that?
Sorry, from me?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you. I know that this weren't on the site visit, but or reaction was on the site visit.
Yeah, I might tag in Dee Dee or Alice. I know that they're on the call, and unfortunately I had to miss this site visit.
Dee Dee?
Sorry, Chair Parker, can you just repeat that question one more time?
So the slide that we have up here, it sounds like this was a discussion that John had with you and Alice regarding additional CONCOM oversight during the site visit. And I just wanted to, not that I'm checking up on you, John, I wanted your reaction on this slide here.
Yeah, so I know for the abandoned utility poles and wires, that was something that we noticed during the site visit. But now it's made clear that it's strictly within the buffer zone. So similar to what Elena said, it would be beneficial to have the updated square footage of impacts for our records, especially when it's time for the COC filing. And in terms of the building and infrastructure projects that would have to come back to us, to me, that sounds more like either prior to construction materials or during construction materials. Yeah, it just sounds more like they would come back and touch base with us and see if they need to file potentially for an amendment or a completely new NOI. But yeah, I feel like that's more case by case basis.
Okay. Understood. So, John, I guess what you're saying is that things could change on the infrastructure, that you might have to come back for an amendment, or if it was material, an NOI. Is that the clarification you're looking for?
No, and maybe I'm raising an issue that isn't necessary to be raised. But for instance, this is all one parcel right now, 10 acres. So we're presenting the entire parcel to you to explain the entire build out. But
Mhm.
once the land is transferred, this parcel will be subdivided to different ownership entities. So for instance, the tree house is, 800 feet away from your buffer zone. Is there a need, because that was described in this notice of intent filing, is there a need to comply with the order of conditions when we proceed with the treehouse development?
I
Do we need
see.
to submit, do we need to submit Boston, through construction documents, BWC documents, all that, everything that comes in the order of conditions?
Yeah.
Apologies, and John, I misunderstood your question. So the order of conditions, the way that we interpret that is that it applies to jurisdictional portions of the project strictly. So I think that it should be fine to proceed with other portions of the project which are not jurisdictional. I know that Alice Brown has her hand raised, so I will also check in with her to see if there's anything to add.
Alice?
Yes, sorry about that. I want to second what Elena's saying and use this to apply Air Pollution Control Commission best practices, which is that if you subdivide parcels and you want us to sort of allocate in that subdivision, this permit is affiliated with this parcel or with this ownership, I think you should come loop back with us, but it won't need to go through this kind of permit. We can just administratively ensure that, the deed recording for this lives with the Harvard House to the extent that that is like the place where the ongoing work will need to be done. I would assume that the first two phases are going to be done before you have subdivided, so I would just proceed as usual with those. And then as
we will subdivide both of those parcels also, because the financing needs to be attached to a subdivided parcel. So
So
the
you'll-
Brook House and the Russell House will be subdivided parcels within the 10 acres.
Sorry, but the infrastructure you're doing today, will things be subdivided before you start that infrastructure work?
Most likely not.
Okay, so I would say you've got this order of conditions. It will
Mhm.
apply to the infrastructure work.
Yes.
It's recorded to a deed somewhere. As you subdivide, I would subdivide off of this order of conditions, and then you'll just need to submit an update that says this is affiliated with this final parcel in the end. If the wetland area is going to be part of a
Okay.
different parcel, you might need to do a
Okay.
sort of twofer, but that's how I would sort of
Okay.
legally break it off.
Sounds okay. I understand. As we subdivide, we'll talk to you and talk to Elena
Yep.
and
And we can just make
Okay.
sure that like
Make
the
sure.
recording of the order
Yeah.
is assigned to the proper parcel moving forward.
sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alice. I'm still thinking about this a little bit. I'm going to go to Commissioner Herbst while we're on this subject. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm not certain. I think there may be, I don't know if you might have to amend at some point just to be quick once you subdivide to just clarify who the owner is. I think at most it would be that is my guess, but that might be necessary.
Yeah.
Okay. So once we subdivide, we'll circle back with you and talk to about what paperwork we need to submit to you and what has to happen that way. Just so everything is clear in the records, 3 years from now, we all remember what we did.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you. Commissioner Herbst, since I have you, did you want to comment?
Sure. My main question is about to the extent you are, sorry, I'm trying to pull up I had a slide to the extent that you are working in the buffer zone, because I'm wondering about the lawn area, what that area is now, and what it's changing to, and are you changing grades there? So could you talk about that first and then other questions?
Sure. Can you go back on the slides? I think it's probably geared towards David because you're really looking for the program in that lawn area. But if you could go back a couple slides so we can all see what, one more, please. One more, two more. Right there.
Yeah,
So you're speaking to the green circle?
Yep.
And the center, okay. So grading over there doesn't change a lot. We're pretty close, probably within a foot of what the existing grades are there, and it's a really flat area.
Yeah, and just to add in there a little bit, we have some grading adjustments between 100-foot and the guess what's depicted here, the 75-foot. So we are that bike path that kind of curves around that lawn is a little bit higher. So we're sloping down a little bit. But then as it transitions into the existing tree line, there are no, which is approximately that 75-foot line. We have no grading changes there. We're just sort of working with the existing grades because we're retaining all of those trees.
All right. I guess I have some concern about the need to do that. And the other is just, I mean, you've actually got your erosion and control inside the 50-foot line or at it. Or I'm wondering if you have been over generous there and whether those
Yeah,
can.
we can certainly pull that back to
Yeah.
limits of a disturbance for sure.
Because, you know, once you create it, then they're going to disturb to it. That's the way it works. So that's something I would want to see at least before we issue. But that and I don't. I'll see if other people have any concerns about adding in the grass area in that particular. But that's my main issue is wanting to understand why the erosion and control is where it is.
Because to be honest with you, we probably didn't give it enough thought to, we would like protect the wetland without thinking about ensuring that the trees don't get disturbed. You know, so what we can do is we can go back and revisit this, and we can pull the erosion control back to the limit of disturbance, and that way it'll be nice and clear, and there will be no mistakenly, you know, working closer to the wetland than what we anticipated.
Okay. Thanks. That'll be good to see. That's all that I had.
Okay, just one thing on the lawn, you know, when you're out there on site, there's kind of a nice like view into this. You kind of see there's actually not that many trees to the center. And so it's kind of the one area where you can kind of see into it. So the idea is that as you're passing by in the bike path, there's a stopping moment, you know, picnic tables and a small lawn just to sort of overlook and look into this woodland area. So we're just trying to, you know, I guess highlight that as a small sort of, you know, area for the public to view into it.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's why it's there in the first place, you know.
I think I see the picnic tables, but they're outside of things. I've just
the
lawn seems maybe more than you, but okay.
And that would be a great place for the signage, right? Because that's where people will congregate.
Yeah.
Commissioner Herbst, just so I understand, are you looking for a revised site plan, or is the explanation acceptable?
Well, I don't know where they're going to pull it back to, so I mean that would be something.
What I'd like to propose is, you know, if everything goes well, we can close the hearing tonight. We can update this, update the erosion control plan, share it with you and staff for your blessing. Before you don't vote tonight, you vote the next hearing, correct?
We have gotten in the practice of issuing and closing in the same day.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking.
All right, yeah. I mean, we can get this drawing to you in the next day or so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to other commissioners, just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, and all the infrastructure improvements, roadways, paths, and water, sewer, electric, gas, and all that. How much of that is intended to be turned into public infrastructure, or how much it'll remain private forever?
So the water, we submitted plans to Phil last spring, I think, to get his feedback, and the water line, we had originally suggested bringing it through, and he suggested we end it at the cul-de-sac with a hydrant. So the water, and I anticipate that the water would be public and an easement would be created. The sanitary will have a sanitary main that goes in this roadway as well. We really didn't get this in discussions if that would be public or private. By assumption was that you'd probably have a curb to curb utility easement for sewer and water, but drainage would remain the responsibility of the developer.
So there's no roadway that'll be intended to turn. The city's going to wind up with a stormwater permit. So I'm just trying to figure out on roadways, does the city wind up winning some?
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you did it in earlier phases, but I imagine we'd probably follow that model where the private ways in the earlier phases of its development.
Yep, that's how we did it. And the reason I asked that is then you've got, it seems like very large infiltration fields, which are fine.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, who owns those? You're going to subdivide these parcels. They may be sitting on parcel X, but they're draining parcel Y. How are you divvying all that up, or what's your intent to do all that?
I believe, and correct me if I misspeak, is that there'll be cross easements through between the various parties here for maintenance. Jerry, please join us.
Yeah, sorry. Mr. Sullivan, we're going to have a Olmsted Village Master Association that will be responsible for maintaining it, and it will be supported on a pro rata basis by all the units on the in the village.
Yep. No, that's fine. I'm just curious how it all works.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I tried to answer.
Sometimes these big, long developments, you try to outweigh us all. We all know we have a expiration date, and some of you guys like to just say, "Hey, I can get this, get by this guy, this guy." I know, John, you said 3 years, but I don't know. It just gets me nervous. So on all this here, your timing on all this building, if everything goes well, how many years does it take to get you done?
Zoe and I are betting whether we finish it by 2030 or not, but I've been doing this since 2006.
No, she's going to win the bet. So, all right, no, I understand it most and stuff. I don't really have any other questions of what you're proposing to do. You know, the development to date has worked fine, still in excellent shape. All the stuff that's been done, everything seems to work out fine out there. So, I don't have any other issues.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Linay.
Yeah, I had just a couple questions. One is, any concern on that Harvard Street edge? I did look at it in Street View, and it looks pretty densely planted, and I think there's a chain link fence there. But is there any concern with illegal dumping? I know we see that a lot around the city, in an area that maybe people perceive as sort of neglected. I'm not saying it looks neglected, but you know, it's some sort of opportunity there. And then I think my other comments sort of relate to the lawn area. I do wonder if that edge, you know, of the lawn, where it's meeting, I guess, existing vegetation, you know, is there either something there to ensure how it is mowed right at that edge, or maybe there are some, like a couple rows of plants added that sort of transition the lawn to the wetland planting that's existing. And then I wondered if maybe those 3 trees that are being proposed for that area, are they actually impeding the view into the wetland? Or I think this grading is kind of, it's pretty sloped down towards the lawn, right? Is that right?
The slope from the path down to the woodland? Is that what you're saying?
Or like in the other direction, like from Harvard Street, there's like a
yes,
kind of a slope down, right? So then that's sort of, I'm not sure. I guess I don't have a great sense of what the view would be from like the lawn area, but would you be able to kind of, you know, is that a chance to sort of see and understand the wetland? Like, I guess maybe having almost a little more of a relationship to it, so it doesn't maybe have, let's see, I'll comment a little slope from Harvard Street, but it's pretty flat. Okay.
So
yeah, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
I guess a couple thoughts. That we made a real attempt to achieve a 1-to-1 caliper replacement. And see, we admittedly probably planted more trees, proposed more trees than we might have typically. So we're really trying to achieve that within that 100-foot buffer. So your comment about those 3 or 4 trees that's potentially blocking the view, a little bit comes from that, is trying to achieve your requested ratios. So that's just being really transparent, right, in the thinking of this. Because the reason why we didn't do the entire rate 1:1 ratios because we thought that'd just be too many trees just to put in there for the sake of it. So we are looking at trees adjacent to it to help meet that ratio. And that's why there is that split. Because we don't want to just jam it in there for the sake of it, because I don't think that's necessarily best for the tree health or necessarily for the use of the space. So that's one set of thoughts. The wetland itself, you know, when you're out there, it doesn't sit as like a central, really wet area that has a typical, like, there's a meadow feel to it, but there is still, if you look at the contours are always falling. You know, it's not like a central low spot, even though there is a wetland designated in that spot. So it is not the most amazing vista per se, right? It is a woodland area in an urban environment. And we're trying to not bring people through it so much. We are trying to bring people to the edge of it to enjoy. There is a nice feel to it at this corner, and that's why we're positioning this there. So there's, you know, it isn't like this is this amazing wetland area. And the last thing is, I don't think maybe in the winter, but I don't really think you're seeing through this whole thing back up to Harvard. So I'm not even sure you're really seeing the embankment that is on Harvard from say that lawn area or that bike path. So just in terms of how it actually lands. In terms of the debris getting dumped, I can't really speak to that. I don't know if there's a huge problem of that now. And I would, if there is, I hope.
There has been
Yeah.
issues historically with dumping, right? You know, we Two Life and Lena New Boston do not control the site yet. It's still controlled by the Division of Capital Asset Management, and we attend monthly Boston State CAC meetings for years, and the tree, you know, sort of keeping up with debris removal and trash pickups is a regular occurrence, regular part of that conversation. I will say, once Two Life and Boston take control of the site, we will be very sort of diligent in our trash.
Zoe, 90% of it is trash that is dropped along Harvard Street.
Right.
It is a cliff from Harvard Street down, and so nobody's bringing refrigerators or anything like that down. When on the flat part of our undeveloped Olmsted Green, occasionally they would do that, and we'd set up bollards or we'd police it, but I don't think we're going to have a problem with refrigerators.
That's good. I think that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, no, appreciate that question, Commissioner Lay, because the earlier phases of this, it was a bit of a filling out a scavenger hunt sheet of urban debris in some of these isolated wetlands. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are on top of that. And it doesn't sound like it's, refrigerators, motorcycles, dump trucks of bricks, that sort of fun stuff that's hard to get out. So appreciate the project description. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Conan?
Just curious why the name? Is there like some sort of spirit of the emerald necklace being connected in some way here, or what?
So the prior 25 acres is named Olmsted Green East and Olmsted Green West. So there was a sense of celebrating the emerald necklace and being next to the Franklin Park. The Olmsted Village idea, even though it may evolve into being Olmsted Green if Zoe has her way, the village is because we are creating more density. We're going to have a convenience store. We're going to have some health services. And so it's a little denser. So that's where the village came in. But and then we're naming it after Brooke and Russell to celebrate two very, very famous people of color in this country.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So given what transpired in the site visit, I'm just looking for some clarification here. Now, it seems like nobody knows exactly what square footage, and I'd actually like to see cubic footage, will be disturbed in the jurisdictional area when the poles are being removed, correct?
2 poles. The pole is about a 12-inch diameter, and that's really the limit of disturbance, the diameter of 2 utility poles. Because the overhead wires are above grade, and they will simply be removed. Right now they're high. They're in the sky, so the cables can be removed, and the poles can be removed as well. But as far as disturbance at land level, it's the circumference of the area of 2 utility poles.
Will they be cut at ground level or something, or will it be pulled out?
That's a good question. I was, to minimize disturbance, you could cut it at grade and call it a day. But the alternative is you're leaving a pole that does have contaminants in it in the ground, right? Do you leave it alone, or do you go in and just pull it up and then take it out? I don't know if the commission has a preference.
Well, personally, I always think these are the opportunities. If we can clean something up, then we should. And then it leaves for a cleaner space for whatever lives there, right? So
we can go cut the pole down and then bring in a really small machine that can just pull it up and take it away. And that is outside. It's in the buffer, but outside the wetland area.
Okay. Do you know when the subdivision is happening?
Well, the transfer is this June, and Jerry, do you have an idea?
I would project that it'll be January of 2026, and maybe it'll be May, but right around then.
So in a year.
Yes.
Why is that, Jerry? Land court review?
No, it's just when the projects are ready to start, we'll subdivide it into the different parcels so that when Zoe's developing her senior housing, she has a parcel that she does. We subdivided all of Olmsted Green into separate entities because the financing gets attached to the subdivided parcel, and that's what they get their security in. So when those projects, it'll come closer to when those projects are ready to go than when the day we buy it.
Oh, okay. It just seemed a long time. I thought maybe it was land court review. Maybe I'd registered land. Okay.
We already have a preliminary subdivision plan, that DCAM has to sign off on, and it's just a, it's not a problematic, it's just a process.
Commissioner Conan, sorry.
No worries. That is why I was asking, just to understand, how the time length this year that we're talking about. So once I heard there that there will be some sort of entity, Jerry, I think you named it, and I can't remember. There's an association that is common for the entire property that will be responsible for the upkeep of the space, that'll be working with all the different owners. Did I understand that correctly?
Homestead Village Master Association, it may have a different name, but that's the concept. And they will be responsible not only for maintaining the drainage and all of the runoffs and spouts, but also the pervious pavement, vacuuming that to make sure that system works, and doing the landscaping along the edges of the private roads. They will also be responsible for that and providing potentially area security.
So if there's any compliance issues or anything, that would be the entity that would be responsible?
Yes. But it represents all the building owners.
I see. Okay. Well, I think I heard that once a subdivision happens, whichever subdivision does have space within jurisdictional area, you'll be back at the Concom, at least for those subdivisions, to figure out what needs to happen. So I think maybe you need to wait for more questions, but it does seem here that we could use a little bit more information, but I think we have all the information you have right now. Thank you. Thanks,
Right.
Parker.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst, any final comments after hearing all this?
No, thank you.
Okay, and then I'll ask you about moving this along tonight with the order of conditions, with that special condition regarding the erosion control, movement of the erosion control.
Well, it sounds like they're saying they can provide it in a day or two. I'm okay with approving. I just won't be signing until I see it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Members of the public, I don't see any raised hands. Okay. Okay. Commissioner Herbst, I am inclined to entertain a motion to issue the order of conditions, close the hearing with a special condition that there is an erosion control plan that needs to be approved before the project can commence construction.
That sounds right.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, seeing it's January and I make one motion per year, I'll take this opportunity to make that motion.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
You have been a fan of Olmsted all along. Thank you.
Chair Parker.
Yes, please.
There is, not to be a thorn in the side, there was a public comment letter that was submitted in our file. I don't know if it needs to be.
Yeah, I
addressed.
saw that.
It's kind of extra jurisdictional, but
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I meant to comment on that. Thank you. Yeah, we did
Okay.
have one letter in the file, and it was extra jurisdictional. The commenter was at for an inventory of abandoned buildings in the city. She was making the point that before we add new structures within the city, that there'd be an assessment of empty abandoned buildings to see if they could be utilized instead of projects such as this, which is clearly a policy issue that's not within our purview. Okay, so do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Linay,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan.
I'd like to see a little bit more clarification on the polls as well, but like Commissioner Herbst said, I would sign after I see the documentation. Bye.
Okay, Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so that carries 6-0. Okay, thank you. I'm sure you'll be in touch with staff very quickly here, and congratulations. This has been quite the odyssey. And as I think Commissioner Sullivan was alluding to, I assume we'll be seeing you for an extension. And I'm also curious if Zoe is gonna prevail on the naming here. So interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
all.
very much.
Next item on the agenda, a request for a determination of applicability from Sasaki Architects on behalf of the City of Boston Public Facilities Department for the proposed geotechnical and environmental exploration work, which consists of 7 test borings and 2 test pits at 471 Commercial Street in the North End, better known as the Mirabella Pool, where my daughter learned how to swim.
Chair Parker, I'm going to recuse myself since I guess Boston Parks is the property owner here.
Fantastic, and thank you for the pool. Okay, who's here on behalf of the proponent, or Eleanor, are you handling this?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Marquis Smeka. I'm the Assistant Director for the Public Facilities Department who's overseeing this construction project. Along with me is the team from Sasaki. Steve, I believe, is on and should be taking over for the rest of the meeting. Thank you very much tonight.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Steve Engler with Sasaki, civil engineer. Also with me here this evening is Carlos Ceruzzi, principal in charge of the project, and Stacy Chapman, who's the project manager for our office, and Chloe Dixon, also from Sasaki, and also Brett Grunert from Weston and Sampson, who is the project manager, consultant of ours for geotechnical and environmental engineering. So thank you for hearing us. Great, thank you. So you can see the picture here is the existing Lango and Popolo Park site. In the background is the Mirabella Pool location that we are discussing this evening for the new North End Community Center. Next slide, please. So I want to give a little background on the project. Actually, if you can skip ahead a couple slides, a little bit out of order. Quick introductions. Marquis introduced himself on behalf of Public Facilities Department. Also part of the team will be the Boston Center for Youth and Families, who is, of course, the user, operator of the pool site, and also property management for the city. Next slide shows the team also includes the owner's project manager, PMA Consultants. Tim Cheney is here this evening from PMA. The next slide Sasaki team, as I just introduced ourselves, some of the folks that are here this evening and the key staff on this project. Next slide shows our consultant team. As I mentioned, Weston Sampson, Brett is here this evening, as well as many other consultants that are not here this evening with us. Now, if you don't mind going back through the second slide, we'll continue in the overview of the project. Sorry, go back if you don't mind. Sorry, they're out of order. So the project began 2019 with a study for the replacement of the existing Nazaro Center on the north end. And through that study, selected the existing Mirabel Pool site as the most advantageous site for the replacement of the existing Nazaro Center and those amenities that it provides to the north end community. So being that it will be the Mirabel Pool site, the project will also include the reconstruction of the Mirabel Pool building, and most likely the pool itself. As I mentioned, the team includes PMA consultants and Sasaki as the architects. And currently we're in the schematic design phase of the project. And what we're here to discuss this evening is soil testing to support that schematic design effort to determine geotechnical and environmental concerns with the soil, if there's any contamination or structural issues with the soil that we need to be aware of as we design and come up with cost estimates for the project. This project has had a few community meetings already, one in April and most recently in December. There'll be more coming up in the winter, spring of this year to discuss the actual design of the project. This evening, really, what we're focusing on is just the soil testing to support our schematic design efforts. The general schedule for the project is that we would begin early site work in the fall of 2025, and that construction would be completed in the spring of 2028. Meaning the pool would be open for this coming season, but then would be closed for the 2026 and 2027 seasons and reopening for 2028. So there would be a couple seasons the pool would have to be closed for this construction. I should mention the park itself and the ball fields would all remain open during construction and wouldn't be impacted. Next slide, if you don't mind skipping now past the team slides. I have a slide that shows the site, just to give everyone some context where we are, where it's located. As I mentioned, there's the ball fields along Commercial Street, the Langone Pueblo Park, which remain as is. And you can see outlined in red our project site, including the pool deck, the pool building, and there's also a splash pad on the entrance of Commercial Street and a small parking lot that exists today. A few trees there that are on the east side of our site, and to the east of the site is the Coast Guard facility on Commercial Street. Next slide, please. So the proposed testing locations are shown here, circled in red. We're also showing the existing resource areas. The site is bordered by the coastal bank, which is existing seawall, shown in a solid yellow line here on the top of the page to the north edge of the site. Shown in dashed yellow lines is the 25-foot waterfront area and the 100-foot coastal bank buffer zone in the jurisdictional area. Also, in dashed cyan, you can see the existing FEMA floodplain lines that extend basically to the retaining wall at the edge of the ball fields, so where the pool deck meets the ball fields. And the dashed red line here shows the Tidelands historic high water line for Chapter 91 jurisdiction. So it's a little hard to see at the scale, I know, but the round circles are showing the proposed boring locations, and the dark squares will be the test pit locations. So there's, I think you mentioned 2 test pits that are within the jurisdictional area. As you can see along the right at the back edge of the existing seawall. Purpose of those is really to understand the condition of that seawall, if there's any structural improvements that need to be made, and if we are making improvements, what the existing conditions are behind that wall that we're working with. The boring locations would be, and I should mention those test pits are probably about 4 feet wide, maybe 4 feet deep, or deeper, depending on how deep we can get before we hit refusal or groundwater, anything caving in. But really just want to get down to the footing of that existing wall as much as we can. The borings you see here would go deeper, probably 80 feet or so. With a drill rig, it would be less disturbance on the surface than the test pits, probably limited to spoils piles, etc., from that drilling operation. Everything would be restored at the completion of the testing to existing additions. Of course, some of these are located in the concrete pool deck, so those would have to be jackhammered to get to the testing and then backfilled probably with cold patch, potentially with concrete, depending what BCOF decides is necessary to reopen for this year. And the schedule for the testing, generally we'll be looking to do the borings soon as we can, probably in about a month, depending on the comments we received this evening. And the test pits would have to be done once the ground thaws, so probably a little bit further out. Each operation would probably be a few days of work when the time comes, but would be restored at the completion. So next slide I have is just showing it, just a graphic to remind everyone of the schedule where we are today. We've had this couple community meetings so far on the design of the project. We're currently in the schematic design phase. We are planning to have a future community meeting to discuss the schematic design options in the spring and going into the summer as we get more detailed design of the project. So that's the extent of our presentation this evening. Just open it up to any questions or comments.
Great. Just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. I don't really have any questions here. Elena, do you have anything?
I don't have any questions on this either. I just wanted to flag that there is one public comment letter that is in the drive folder for the commission's review.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, you mentioned the test pit might be 4 feet deep. I would expect those walls go down substantially deeper than that. If you want to get a look at the wall, you're probably going to have to get down maybe even 10 feet, because I assume that's a granite wall down to piles.
I think it'll depend somewhat, as I said, on how far we can get, what the excavator can reach. That's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, if the purpose of a test pit is to investigate the wall, don't you have to investigate the wall? So you'd have to get down maybe 10 feet. And that's a pretty sizable excavation. I'm curious. When you said 4 feet deep, that's like finger width.
A minimum, I guess, 4 feet. Could be more.
So when would we find out? When the wall falls in the hole that's 12 feet deep? Or I'm just curious. It's just when do we find out what you're really going to do right beside the ocean where we might have some issues?
Yeah, Steve and John, I'm happy to respond to this.
Yeah.
The goal of the test pits along the seawall isn't to investigate the foundation of the seawall. The concepts that we're looking at right now will not rely on the seawall itself to support any new development. And so what we're trying to do is understand the geometry of the seawall on the land side so that we can better avoid any impacts to the seawall during design and construction.
Okay, so you assume it's kind of triangular, coming inward, landward. You want to see where it's coming in?
Yeah, we want to just better understand the inland side of the seawall and how it's currently constructed.
And anywhere along that proposed area you work in, do you have any drainage outfalls from the existing facilities?
Yeah, we've seen at least two. We do not have the full survey yet. We're still working on it now, but we can see two outfalls from the pool deck that go towards through the seawall.
Yeah.
This location. We don't yet know what we're doing with those drainage on the site, but
yeah, no, I realize this is just a test pit and all that, and then later full plans will come in and you'll be presenting them. I'm just curious what's out there. That's all. All right, that's all I had.
Commissioner Sullivan, in the comment letter, there was a comment that the plan was stamped but not signed by a PE. Did you notice that?
No, I did not.
I can address it was signed digitally, and hence it doesn't have a traditional signature on it. We can certainly provide a copy that is hand signed.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan, what is the protocol for digital stamping, I guess? That accepted these days?
Yeah,
or?
Yeah, it's not acceptable to the Water and Sewer Commission. I guess a lot of other people accept it. We go back to the 1930s. We like ink.
Sure. Blue or black?
Well, generally we like a black. That's kind of, with that staid, proper. You know how it is.
Okay. We like blue in the legal circles because you can tell, but it's,
Well, that, yeah, we know that. That's why we like black.
there you go. Commissioner Wilson, what do you have?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything further beyond sort of what Commissioner Sullivan was getting at, is that the depth of the test pit to ascertain what we're looking for might be substantial, but my understanding is that's a temporary disturbance, so there's not much we can do unless you find something very unexpected. So hopefully you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Commissioner Conan?
Thank you, Chair Parker. This stems from the comment letter as well. There was a question about the carrying capacity of the Boston Water Sewer Commission, with a suggestion alongside saying maybe this should be treated and sent into the ocean, instead into the harbor, instead of sending it back into the street. Is this somebody that you're working with, whoever submitted the letter, or I'm asking the proponent here?
Sorry, I missed it. Do you want to repeat the question?
It's somebody by the name John Modzelowski.
And the question is whether we are working with John?
No. In any community meeting or anything, has this person been there? Have you heard this question before, and do you have a response?
Not aware of in any of the community meetings. Carla may know from her past experience. We can address some of the concerns if you'd like this evening. I did see a copy of the letter before the meeting.
Yeah, I'll just say I don't recall whether I don't recall the name, whether that person's been at any community meetings so far. And I don't think that question has come up yet. I do expect people to have questions like that as we develop the design, but we're really not there yet. And I would say we haven't gotten that detailed yet in our conversations in community meetings.
Yeah, and I would say, as far as the letter goes, we'd only be discussing issues that relate to our jurisdiction in this RDA this evening, not future work.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, thank you. That's all, Chair Parker.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any hands up, but I did see in the chat, Paul K asked, I live down the street. I'd like a bit more detail on what this drilling will entail, how many days, how loud, etc.
Are you able to answer that one?
Yeah, so the drilling will be conducted during normal business hours. There are some, just by driving the instrumentation into the ground, there's some banging noises that will occur, during drilling. And the total duration should be up to about 3 weeks worth of work.
Okay, great, thank you. I don't see anything else. Do you, Elena? Did you get any emails?
Nope. The only one that we got was the one that was referenced and is already in the file.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Oh, apologies. There is a hand raised.
Okay. And that is John. Okay, John, you can unmute yourself. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I do think I wrote the letter. I'm in a butter, and I'm a professional engineer, civil. I do think that you should have more detail. When someone says they're gonna dig a test pit 4 feet, it makes us all feel comfortable, but you have to realize that the plan shows these test pits right next to the, you're calling it a structure. It's an armored slope from my viewing of the site. It's just very, very close. If we are to be using the pool in this upcoming summer, and these test pits are left open during a high tide area, and they're deeper than 4 feet, I think there's a very good opportunity for that armored slope to cave. One other thing, I did attend a meeting, I think it was not the December meeting, but the one before that. So I've been following this, and I didn't think it appropriate to talk about the Boston Water and Sewer, and I recognize that this is not germane to your current considerations, but it's going to come up sooner rather than later, so I just put that in there. But I do think that you need a detail that you can hold these people to, vis-a-vis where the test pit is and how they're going to fix that wall. You know, when they start working on a coastal bank, you're just going to let that be done with an RDA if you're not careful. You know, they're going to say, oh my God, look, the thing collapsed because of an extreme tide or whatever. How long is the pit going to be open? You know, these things should be on that plan. That's all. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for these things from the proponent.
Thank you. And I can assure you that if they do any work other than what is proposed tonight, they do need to come back for approval. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I don't see anyone else. Would entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with standard erosion controls. And there's one other thing. This is terrible. Standard Commissioner. And John had brought it up. Resubmit a plan with a signed ink, or what do you call that? Wet signed plan. Yeah. Thank you. And so that motion is out there. Would anybody like to make it?
I'll make the second motion of the year, and that'll be the end of them.
You waited to the last hearing in January too. I was a little concerned. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Linay? No, she's recused. I'm sorry. Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 5-0. Okay, thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next item on the agenda is a request for an extension to the original order of conditions issued for DEP file number 0061838 and Boston file number 2022-002 from FOTH on behalf of the Massachusetts Port Authority for the proposed underwater debris removal located at 88 Black Falcon Ave in South Boston. Resource areas land under ocean. Is there someone here from Massport, or are you handling this, Elena?
Mr. Commissioner, my name is Chet Myers. I'm here from Massport.
Great.
And I believe I'm the only one here, so I'm more than happy to do the entire discussion. This request is an extension to an existing order of conditions. There was an order of conditions issued by the Commission in 2022 for removal of underwater debris in front of Flynn Cruiseport. At the time, the request was for approximately 85 cubic yards of debris to be removed. We did remove a significant amount of debris at the time. It was approximately 70 cubic yards. However, there were a few items that we did not remove. At the time, we had contracted with Great Lakes, who was actually doing work dredging for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and we were only able to negotiate a certain amount of timber removal at the time. Some of the other submerged debris did not appear to be a significant issue at the time, and so we actually let it go, but some of it seems to be floating a little bit higher than it was at the time. It was floating below our approved dredge elevation, which was -35 mean lower low water. It was below that elevation at the time. Now it appears to be slightly higher. And we were hoping to get an extension so that we could go back and remove a couple of pieces of that remaining debris. If you want to go to the next page. So these are underwater survey results, sonar results that show the pieces of debris that we have concerns about. Again, the original order of conditions was issued on February 3rd of 2022. If you could go to the next slide, please. This is 4 objects that are on sort of the western side of the cruise port, and their locations. And then if you go to the next page, there's one location that's on the eastern end of the cruise port. That's essentially it. Sir, we would just like to extend our order of conditions to be able to take care of those remaining pieces of debris.
Okay, thank you. It's always amazing to me how something like that can cause such significant damage to a vessel.
Yeah, well, it is of concern for the vessels coming in and out, and also to the marine pilots who want to make absolutely sure that they have sufficient depth before they can bring a vessel in.
Right. Okay. I don't have anything. Elena, on this? Do you have anything?
Yeah, just a few questions. So we were just curious about whether the same equipment, same methods are going to be used for the rest of the debris removal. And frankly, out of curiosity, just what kind of debris has been found so far and what you anticipate finding in the last 4 pieces.
So we expect the debris to be the same as the other debris that we removed. There's an existing historic timber fender system at Flynn Cruise Port, and it's not well suited to large vessels, which is why we've been slowly replacing the system with, if you go out there, you can see there's these large concrete dolphins that we've installed, and there's sort of these large rubber cylindrical fenders that go up against them. We actually, I believe, recently came before the Conservation Commission for installation of, I think 3 to 5 more of those fenders. But the old fender system historically was this timber fender system, and these huge cruise ships just don't do well up against it. So we've been disassembling it a little bit at a time, but historically, as that timber fender system has broken under the large vessels, the timber debris falls into the dredge footprint. And there's actually a good amount of debris that's below the authorized dredge elevation that we may never actually get. We typically look for pieces of debris that are higher than that elevation. Those are the ones that we're typically most concerned about. That's what we would expect. We would expect this to also be timber debris, similar to the other historic timber debris. And our methods will be the same, which is we'll have a dive crew that'll go down at the specified coordinates. They'll locate the piece of debris in question. They'll sling it, and there will be a barge on a crane that will just lift it to the surface, put it aside, and they'll take the debris back to their yard and we'll dispose of it properly.
Perfect, thank you. I appreciate the explanation.
Yep. And
Chair Parker, that was it for us.
Okay. Okay, and I would note that if you were using the same means and methods, then we'd be looking at an amendment, not an extension, right?
I suppose so. I apologize for not knowing the appropriate.
No, I just want to make sure. I was surprised to hear the question. So, but there's no.
It's just a change in the date.
Iteration to doing anything different than what.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. We're just looking. Yeah, we're just looking for a time extension. That's it. We're not going to change anything in how we recover the debris. Absolutely.
Commissioner Sullivan and your friend.
Yeah. Oh, God help me. So, Chet, how big is each piece of debris? About 20 feet?
Well, it can vary in size, and you don't always know until you bring the piece of debris up. But the original piles were probably, there's 35 feet of water at low tide at the cruise port, and then the surface of the cruise port is about 16 feet above mean lower low water. So theoretically, they could be as long as 40 feet, but typically, they're broken piles. They're not full extension of the piles, so they're typically shorter than that.
And the only thing that confused me, you said you were going to leave them there, and now they're starting to move. How's that work?
So because they're timber, they have a tendency of floating a little bit.
Oh, so why wouldn't they have floated before? I just curiously, if you were going to leave them there and say, yeah, they're down below, I don't care. Now all of a sudden they're rising to the surface. It seems strange.
So they're not rising to the surface.
No, rising higher.
They're varying in elevation within a foot or so from the -35 depth. So they were slightly over before, and they were identified as part of our original debris, but we didn't consider them a serious concern. But they've risen between 6 inches and a foot, and now they're actually threatening the authorized dredge depth out there. And so we would like to get them and follow through. So they were originally identified. We didn't think it was that big of a deal when we weren't able to get them out originally. But we just like a little bit of extra time to go back and get them.
I figured you're gonna tell me it was prop wash, and then I just go silent again.
Well, I mean, I suppose that's a possibility too. But these things have a tendency of for whatever reason, changing their buoyancy over time. I'm not sure why.
I do the same thing. All right, that's all I had.
They don't typically float up to the surface, though.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Linay.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here either, thanks.
Commissioner Conan.
Is there even more debris than what you've discovered to be of interest now?
These are the items that we believe are above our dredge depth out there. There is probably debris that is deeper, but we certainly haven't identified it for removal at this point.
And because of the change in buoyancy, they could rise as well, right?
That is a possibility, yes.
So this is just an extension, but it's also more work, sounds like.
Well, it's part of the original work that we scoped, but it's more than what we did in 2022. So that's correct. Absolutely.
But these particular pieces of debris weren't identified back then, is my point.
They were identified, but they were not removed at the time.
I see. Okay. Yeah, and when you said the cruise ships don't really do well against timber, did you mean that the timber doesn't do well against the cruise ships?
I think both of those are true. To be perfectly honest, I think everybody is well aware that a piece of timber is not going to stand against a 200,000 metric ton ship, right? But the pilots are very careful about any ship that they bring in, and they really don't care what any material is that's shallower than the approved dredge depth. They're not going to bring a ship through it, whether it's likely to impact the ship or not. And we have to act as though any piece of debris that is above the dredge elevation could be a threat to the ship. Even when you think about it, it's really unlikely. But I will tell you that that a ship grounding, for example, even if it just grounds on a soft bottom and there's unlikely to be any damage associated with it, is considered a serious maritime event. So ports are vigilant about trying to make sure that that their berths are clear of any debris that could impact the approved dredge depth.
I see. I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Of course.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Herbst.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. And if you do comment, please specify whether you're talking about Commissioner Sullivan's buoyancy or the buoyancy of the timbers. I thought that was the funniest thing you've said in about 5 years. So I'm surprised no one else picked up and laughed at that. I don't see any hands raised. Elena, any emails?
I am not seeing any emails either. And yeah, I think that comment highlights the pros and cons of a virtual hearing where you can turn your camera off and mute yourself as well. Earlier, I was just chuckling to myself in an empty room. So
good.
Well,
we should be all set.
The rest of the commission is very polite. I just want to note that to the rest of you, except for the two that admitted.
I just don't know where that came from. Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to issue a 3-year extension to the order of conditions for DEP file number 0061838 and Boston file number 2022-002.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 6-0. Okay, good luck, Chet.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. There's one continuance. Continued is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061996 in Boston file number 2024-021. We will now begin our regular meeting. The first item on the agenda is administrative updates. Eleanor.
Yes, just a quick, happy administrative update. Vivian, who's on the call right now, has joined our team as the conservation fellow, so she'll be on our team for the next 6 months. And Vivian, not to put you on the spot, but if you just wanted to say a few sentences, introduce yourself to the commission.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. I'm Vivian De La Paz. I am the new intern with the Conservation Commission. I'll be here until the end of June. I'm a third year at Northeastern and I study environmental science, and I was very happy to be here today. A lot of interesting projects.
Fantastic. Welcome. And one of your professors lends support over at Charlesgate. They've been doing some monitoring with the group over there for the worked on the goat, the water goat. And I can't remember his name right now but when you're back on campus, you might, you could just Google him and you might want to let him know you're working with the commission. I'm sure he'd be happy to hear that. But welcome.
Is there maybe a description you could provide? Maybe I could identify.
And it was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
You know what? I go in the Google Drive in Northeastern and it'll probably come up. I'll also make an effort to look. But it's the Muddy River.
Hi, Conan. I also know Conan from from my previous co-op, which is fun.
Chair Parker, is that Dan Adams from Landing Studio? Is that the
Yeah, could be. Yeah, could be. Carolyn Reeves is the person who heads up the community group over there, and she's been working with him for a while. So if that helps, but we'll figure it out.
Well, so welcome, Vivian.
Okay. Last item on the agenda is acceptance of meeting minutes from September 18th, 2024. I reviewed them. Those are the only ones that are ready. And so they look fine. Would someone like to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes? And John, it'd be great if you did 3 motions.
Well, if I do 3, then I'm excused for 3 more years. So it's up to you. That choice.
Let's
I'll
do
make
it.
the motion to accept the meetings of September 18th, 2024.
Fantastic. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan.
Painfully, yes.
Commissioner Linay.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Conan.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst.
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 6-0. Okay. Thank you very much. Everybody stay warm and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Welcome, Vivian.
Thank you all.
Night.
Good night.